The Tupolev Tu-160 Blackjack bomber screamed through the night sky at 30,000 feet, its variable sweep wings cutting through the darkness like a metallic predator. Inside the cockpit, Major Alexei Volkov gripped the controls with hands that had never trembled in 12 years of service to the Russian Air Force. Tonight, those same hands shook like autumn leaves. The encrypted radio crackled to life. Blackbird 1, this is Kremlin control. Maintain course to target coordinates. Execute Operation Thunderstorm on my mark. Volkov's jaw clenched as he stared at the navigation display. The coordinates weren't for a military target or enemy installation. They were for a civilian hospital in Kyiv, packed with refugees and wounded innocents. His finger hovered over the weapons release button, but something deep in his conscience screamed in protest. Kremlin control, this is Blackbird 1. Request target verification. Coordinates appear to be civilian infrastructure. A long silence filled the radio waves before a cold, unfamiliar voice responded. Major Volkov, you have your orders. Execute immediately or face court-martial for insubordination. The threat hung in the air like toxic gas. Volkov knew what happened to pilots who disobeyed direct orders from Moscow. They disappeared into the gulags of Siberia, never to be seen again. His wife Marina and their 8-year-old daughter Katya flashed through his mind. They were counting on him to come home. But that was only the beginning of a night that would change everything. Volkov made a decision that would echo through the corridors of power from the Kremlin to the Pentagon. Instead of releasing his payload over the hospital, he banked the massive bomber sharply to the west. His co-pilot, Lieutenant Pavel Kozlov, stared at him in disbelief. "Major, what are you doing? Moscow will have our heads." "Moscow can go to hell," Volkov muttered through gritted teeth. "I won't murder children for their political games." The radio exploded with urgent commands from ground control. Blackbird 1, you are deviating from mission parameters. Return to designated flight path immediately. Volkov switched off the radio and pushed the throttles forward. The Blackjack's twin Saturn engines roared to life, propelling them toward the Ukrainian border at supersonic speed. Behind them, he knew that every radar station from Bryansk to Belgorod was tracking their movement. Fighter jets would be scrambling within minutes. "Where are we going?" Kozlov asked, his voice tight with fear. "West," Volkov replied, "as far west as we can get." The next 30 minutes were the longest of Volkov's life. He flew the bomber at treetop level, using every trick he'd learned in flight school to avoid radar detection. The Ukrainian countryside rushed beneath them in a blur of forests and farmland. Every shadow could hide a surface-to-air missile. Every radio tower could be tracking their position. As they crossed into Polish airspace, Volkov finally allowed himself to breathe. He activated the emergency frequency used for defections and spoke into his headset. "This is Russian Air Force Major Alexei Volkov requesting immediate asylum. I am piloting a Tu-160 strategic bomber and seeking safe passage to the nearest NATO airbase." The response came within seconds, spoken in accented English. "Major Volkov, this is Lask Air Base. We have been monitoring your approach. You are cleared for emergency landing on runway 27. Polish F-16s will escort you in. No one expected what came next. As the massive bomber touched down on Polish soil, Volkov knew his old life was over. He would never see Moscow again. Never walk through Red Square or smell the pine forests of his homeland. But he had saved countless lives by refusing to drop his bombs on that hospital. The Polish ground crew surrounded the aircraft with weapons drawn, but their faces showed more curiosity than hostility. Within an hour, Volkov and Kozlov were sitting in a debriefing room with American CIA agents, Polish intelligence officers, and NATO military officials. Major Volkov, said a stern-faced American colonel named Harrison, "Do you understand the significance of what you've done tonight?" Volkov nodded slowly. "I've betrayed my country to save innocent lives." "You've done more than that," Harrison continued. "You've delivered one of Russia's most advanced strategic bombers directly into Western hands. The intelligence value is immeasurable." Over the next several days, Volkov learned just how valuable his defection truly was. The Tu-160 contained classified navigation systems, electronic warfare equipment, and radar technology that NATO had been trying to understand for decades. Every component would be carefully analyzed and reverse-engineered. But that was not what kept Volkov awake at night. 3 days after his landing in Poland, he received a secure phone call that chilled him to the bone. The voice on the other end spoke in perfect Russian. "Hello, Alexei Nikolaevich." Volkov recognized the voice immediately. It belonged to Viktor Petrov, deputy director of the FSB and one of Putin's most trusted enforcers. "Viktor," Volkov replied carefully. "I wondered when you would call. Did you really think you could just fly away from your responsibilities? From your family?" The words hit Volkov like a physical blow. "What have you done to them?" "Nothing yet," Petrov said with cold amusement. "Marina and little Katya are quite safe in their apartment on Leninsky Prospect. They go about their daily routines, unaware that their husband and father is now considered a traitor to the motherland." Volkov's hands began to shake again. "Leave them out of this. They had nothing to do with my decision." "Oh, but they have everything to do with it," Petrov continued. "You see, Alexei, we have a proposition for you. A way to make this all go away." The FSB deputy director outlined a plan that was as brilliant as it was terrifying. Volkov would continue his defection, feeding carefully crafted misinformation to NATO intelligence. He would become a double agent, providing false technical specifications about Russian military capabilities while secretly reporting Western defense secrets back to Moscow. "And if I refuse?" Volkov asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then Marina and Katya will suffer a tragic accident. Perhaps a gas leak in their apartment. These things happen so frequently in Moscow winters." The line went dead, leaving Volkov staring at the phone in his trembling hand. But the nightmare was far from over. Colonel Harrison noticed the change in Volkov's demeanor immediately. The Russian pilot had become withdrawn, nervous, constantly looking over his shoulder. During technical briefings about the Tu-160's systems, Volkov's answers became evasive and contradictory. "Something's wrong," Harrison told his CIA colleague. Agent Sarah Chen, after a particularly frustrating debriefing session. 3 days ago, Volkov was completely cooperative. Now he's acting like he's hiding something. Chen had been analyzing Volkov's psychological profile since his arrival. He's under pressure. The question is from whom? They decided to monitor Volkov's communications more carefully. It didn't take long to discover the FSB contact. Chen's team intercepted Petrov's next call and recorded every word. "The Americans are getting suspicious," Volkov whispered into his secure phone. "They know something's changed. Then you need to give them something to restore their confidence," Petrov replied. "Feed them the false specifications for the R-37M missile system. Make them believe they're getting valuable intelligence." Harrison and Chen exchanged grim looks as they listened to the recorded conversation. Their prize defector had been compromised. "What do we do?" Chen asked. "If we confront him, the FSB will know we're onto their operation." Harrison stared at the photo of Volkov's family that intelligence had provided. Marina Volkova was a schoolteacher. 8-year-old Katya loved ballet and mathematics. Neither had chosen to be pawns in this deadly game. "We extract them," Harrison said finally. "Both of them. Tonight." The rescue operation was one of the most complex the CIA had ever attempted on Russian soil. A team of 6 agents, posing as German tourists, infiltrated Moscow using forged passports and diplomatic cover. They had exactly 4 hours to locate Marina and Katya Volkov, extract them from their apartment, and get them to a safe house before FSB surveillance noticed their absence. Agent Mike Torres led the team through Moscow's underground metro system, using service tunnels and maintenance areas to avoid security cameras. The city above them buzzed with its usual late-night energy, unaware of the covert operation unfolding beneath their feet. Marina Volkova was grading her students' homework when the soft knock came at her door. She looked through the peephole and saw a man in a delivery uniform holding flowers. "Mrs. Volkova, delivery from your husband." Something in the man's accent made her hesitate. Alexei hadn't sent flowers in months, and he was supposed to be on a training mission in Murmansk. "I'm sorry, there must be a mistake," she said through the door. "Ma'am, I need you to open the door. Your husband is in danger, and so are you." The words were spoken in accented Russian, but Marina detected something underneath. American English. She opened the door slowly, keeping the chain latch engaged. Torres showed her a photograph of Alexei standing next to his Tu-160 bomber. "Your husband defected to NATO 3 days ago. The FSB is planning to use you and your daughter as leverage against him. We're here to get you out." No one expected what came next. Marina Volkova was not the helpless schoolteacher the CIA file had described. Before her marriage to Alexei, she had served as a lieutenant in Russian military intelligence. She recognized a black operation when she saw one. "Prove to me that my husband sent you," she demanded. Torres had prepared for this moment. He handed her a small digital recorder containing a message from Volkov himself. "Marina, my love, if you're hearing this, then you know what I've done. I couldn't drop bombs on children. I couldn't be part of Putin's war machine anymore. These people will keep you and Katya safe, but you have to trust them. I love you both more than life itself." Tears streamed down Marina's face as she recognized her husband's voice. She quickly gathered essential belongings while Torres's team secured the hallway. Little Katya woke up confused and frightened as strangers filled their apartment. "Mama, who are these men?" "They're taking us to see Papa," Marina whispered, holding her daughter close. The extraction went flawlessly until they reached the underground parking garage. Torres was leading Marina and Katya toward their escape vehicle when the overhead lights suddenly blazed to life. 20 FSB agents emerged from behind concrete pillars, their weapons trained on the American team. Viktor Petrov stepped out of the shadows, clapping slowly. "Very impressive, gentlemen. The CIA's reputation for bold operations is well deserved. Unfortunately, this particular operation ends here." Torres calculated their chances of fighting their way out. 6 agents against 20 FSB operatives in a confined space. The math was not encouraging. "Let the family go," Torres said. "This is between our agencies." Petrov laughed coldly. "I'm afraid that's not how this works. Mrs. Volkova and her daughter are Russian citizens. They belong here, with us." But Marina Volkova had other ideas. She whispered something in Katya's ear, then suddenly shoved her daughter toward Torres while diving in the opposite direction. The movement created just enough confusion for the American agents to react. Gunfire erupted in the concrete space as both sides sought cover behind cars and support pillars. Torres scooped up Katya and sprinted toward the emergency exit while his teammates laid down covering fire. Marina rolled behind a BMW and came up with a pistol she'd somehow acquired from one of the fallen FSB agents. The firefight lasted less than 3 minutes, but it felt like hours. When the smoke cleared, Torres and Katya had vanished into Moscow's labyrinthine metro system. Marina lay bleeding behind the BMW, her shoulder shattered by a Russian bullet. Petrov knelt beside her, his face twisted with rage. "Where did they take your daughter?" Marina smiled through her pain. "Somewhere you'll never find her." But that was not the end of Marina Volkova's story. While Torres spirited Katya out of Russia through a network of safe houses and diplomatic pouches, Marina found herself in the basement of Lubyanka prison, the FSB's notorious headquarters. For 72 hours, Petrov and his interrogators tried every technique in their arsenal to break her. They offered her money, threatened her with life imprisonment, even showed her fabricated evidence that her husband had been executed by NATO forces. Marina endured it all with the stoic determination of someone who had nothing left to lose. On the 4th day, everything changed. Alexei Volkov walked into the interrogation room. Marina stared at her husband in shock. "Alexei. But how?" "The Americans made me an offer I couldn't refuse," Volkov said quietly. "Complete cooperation in exchange for your and Katya's safety. I thought you were both dead until Petrov showed me the surveillance footage." Petrov smiled triumphantly. "As you can see, Mrs. Volkova, your husband has chosen family over his new NATO friends. He's agreed to return to Russia and resume his duties as a loyal officer." Marina studied her husband's face, looking for some sign of deception or coercion. What she saw there broke her heart. Alexei had genuinely believed he was trading his freedom for their lives. "There's just one problem," Marina said softly. "What's that?" Petrov asked. "I'm not actually Marina Volkova." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Petrov's confident expression faltered. "What did you say?" Marina straightened despite her injuries. "My real name is Captain Marina Kozlova, Russian military intelligence. I've been undercover as a schoolteacher for the past 8 years, monitoring my husband's psychological stability and loyalty to the state." Alexei stared at his wife in horror. "That's impossible. We've been married for 10 years. We have a daughter together." "Katya is real," Marina continued. "And I do love her as if she were my own. But my primary mission was always to ensure that you remained a reliable asset for the Russian Air Force. When you defected, I was ordered to maintain my cover and await further instructions." Petrov's face had gone pale. "You're lying." Marina recited a series of classified code numbers that made Petrov's eyes widen in recognition. Only active GRU agents would know those authentication codes. "My handler's name is Colonel Dmitry Volkov." "Yes, Alexei, he's your uncle. The same uncle who recommended you for flight school and helped arrange our meeting at that university party 10 years ago. Nothing in your life has been left to chance." The truth hit Alexei like a physical blow. His entire marriage, his family life, even his daughter's birth had been orchestrated by Russian intelligence. The woman he loved was a spy whose mission was to watch him. But that was not the most shocking revelation of all. "There's something else you need to know," Marina continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "The mission you refused to carry out, the hospital bombing in Kiev, that was never a real order from Moscow." Petrov lunged toward Marina, but she continued speaking quickly. "It was a test, designed to see if you would follow immoral orders without question. The real target was a weapons depot 20 kilometers away. But when you refused to bomb the hospital, it proved that you had developed a conscience that could override your military conditioning." Alexei's world crumbled around him. "So everything, my defection, bringing the bomber to NATO, betraying my country, all of it was for nothing." "Not for nothing," Marina said. "It was to identify you as a security risk and eliminate you as a strategic asset. Dead pilots tell no secrets." The room fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Petrov was frantically making calculations, trying to understand how his carefully planned operation had become so thoroughly compromised. No one expected what came next. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing the interrogation room in red light. Through the bulletproof windows, they could see FSB agents running through the corridors with their weapons drawn. An explosion rocked the building, sending concrete dust cascading from the ceiling. Then another. And another. Petrov grabbed his radio. "Control, what's happening up there?" The voice that responded was crackling with static and panic. "Sir, we're under attack. Multiple breach points. Unknown assailants with military-grade equipment." Marina smiled despite her pain. You didn't really think the CIA would abandon a valuable asset like me, did you? The rescue operation was unlike anything Moscow had ever seen. A joint team of American Delta Force operators and Polish Grom commandos had infiltrated the heart of Russia's intelligence apparatus. They moved through Lubyanka prison like ghosts, neutralizing guards and security systems with surgical precision. Colonel Harrison led the assault team personally. He'd been planning this operation since the moment Marina Volkova's true identity had been confirmed through back-channel intelligence sharing. The CIA couldn't leave one of their most valuable Russian assets to rot in an FSB prison. Overwatch, this is Team Leader, Harrison whispered into his tactical radio. We've located the primary target. Moving to extract. The door to the interrogation room exploded inward in a shower of smoke and debris. Harrison's team stormed in with military efficiency, their night vision goggles cutting through the chaos. Marina Kozlova, I presume. Harrison said as his medic began treating her wounds. Your country thanks you for 8 years of outstanding service. Marina's eyes widened in confusion. My country. But I'm Russian. Harrison smiled grimly. No, Captain. You're American. Born Marina Kozlov in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. Recruited by the CIA at age 18 and inserted into Russian society with a carefully constructed identity. You've been one of our deepest cover agents for over a decade. The revelation hit everyone in the room like a thunderbolt. Even Alexei, who thought he'd heard every possible twist in this nightmare, stared in disbelief. That's impossible, Petrov sputtered. We verified her background going back 3 generations. You verified what we wanted you to verify, Harrison replied. Every document, every school record, every family photograph was meticulously crafted by our best forgers. Marina Kozlova has been feeding us intelligence on Russian Air Force operations since the day she married Major Volkov. Alexei looked at the woman he'd called his wife, trying to reconcile this revelation with the memories of their life together. Who are you really? Marina met his eyes with something that might have been genuine regret. I'm someone who fell in love with her target when she was supposed to remain emotionally detached. I'm someone who had a beautiful daughter with a man I was ordered to betray. I'm someone who's spent the last 8 years living a lie so deep that I sometimes forgot which version of myself was real. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. As Harrison's team prepared to evacuate their assets, Petrov made one final, desperate play. You can't take them both, he said. Choose. The pilot who defected with classified technology, or the spy who's been compromising our operations for 8 years. You have 30 seconds before my reinforcements arrive. Harrison didn't hesitate. We take them both. That's not possible, Petrov insisted. My men have surrounded the building. You might fight your way out with 1 prisoner, but not 2. Choose. Alexei and Marina looked at each other across the smoke-filled room. In that moment, despite everything they'd learned about deception and betrayal, something real passed between them. Take Marina, Alexei said quietly. She's the real prize. I'm just a pilot who got in over his head. No, Marina protested. Take Alexei and get him back to Katya. She needs her father, even if everything else has been a lie. Harrison made the decision for them. We're taking both of you, and here's why. Marina, you're coming with us because you're an American citizen who's completed her mission. Alexei, you're coming because you're not actually a Russian pilot. The room fell silent except for the distant sound of gunfire in the corridors above. What are you talking about? Alexei demanded. Harrison pulled out a tablet computer and showed them a classified file. Major Alexei Volkov died in a training accident 12 years ago. You are Senior Lieutenant David Mitchell, United States Air Force, inserted into Russian military service as part of a long-term intelligence operation. Your memories of growing up in Russia, your military training, even your relationship with your supposed uncle, all of it was implanted through a combination of hypnosis and pharmaceutical conditioning. The truth was more devastating than anyone could have imagined. Two deep-cover American agents, their memories suppressed and identities reconstructed, had been living as a Russian family for nearly a decade. Their marriage was real, their love was real, but their entire existence had been built on layers of deception orchestrated by intelligence agencies on both sides. Katya, their 8-year-old daughter, was the only genuine thing in their fabricated lives. No one expected what came next. As Harrison's team fought their way out of Lubyanka prison with their recovered agents, Moscow erupted in chaos. The FSB had lost 2 of their most closely guarded prisoners in a raid that penetrated the heart of their security apparatus. Putin himself was awakened in the Kremlin and briefed on the disaster. But the real shock came when intelligence analysts examined the wreckage of the operation. Every classified document that Marina had supposedly stolen over 8 years was actually fabricated intelligence that the Americans had wanted the Russians to have. Every piece of technology that Alexei had brought them in his defected bomber was outdated equipment designed to mislead Soviet engineers. The entire 8-year operation had been an elaborate double deception. The Americans had convinced the Russians that they were running successful spy operations while actually feeding them false information and obsolete technology. 3 days later, Alexei, Marina, and Katya were reunited at a safe house in rural Virginia. The little girl ran into her parents' arms, unaware that everything she'd known about her family was about to change forever. "Are we going home soon?" Katya asked in Russian. Alexei knelt down to meet her eyes. "We are home, little one. This is our real home." The process of recovering their true memories took months of careful psychological treatment. Slowly, piece by piece, David Mitchell remembered his childhood in Kansas, his training at the Air Force Academy, and his recruitment into the most classified program in American intelligence history. Marina Kozlov recalled growing up in Brooklyn, her parents' delicatessen, and her decision to serve her country in the most dangerous way possible. But some memories, they discovered, were too precious to let go. Their love for each other and for Katya had transcended the deception that brought them together. Whatever their real names or nationalities, they had become a genuine family in the midst of an elaborate lie. 2 years later, David Mitchell was flying F-22 Raptors out of Langley Air Force Base under his real identity. Marina worked as a Russian language instructor for the Defense Intelligence Agency. Katya attended a regular American elementary school where she excelled in mathematics and still dreamed of becoming a ballet dancer. Sometimes, late at night, they would speak to each other in Russian and remember the life they'd lived in Moscow. It felt like recalling a vivid dream, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The Tu-160 bomber that had started it all was eventually returned to Russia as part of a diplomatic agreement. But not before American engineers had learned everything they needed to know about its systems and capabilities. Viktor Petrov was quietly reassigned to a desk job in Vladivostok, his career effectively ended by the security breach at Lubyanka. He spent his remaining years wondering how deeply American intelligence had penetrated Russian operations, never knowing that the answer was deeper than he could possibly imagine. The hospital in Kiev that Alexei had refused to bomb was eventually destroyed by a real Russian airstrike 6 months later. But in those intervening months, it had saved the lives of thousands of refugees and wounded civilians. Sometimes, even in a world built on deception, individual acts of conscience could make a difference. In his final report on the operation, Colonel Harrison wrote, "The subjects successfully completed their mission parameters and have been reintegrated into American society. However, the psychological cost of such deep cover operations raises serious questions about the human price of intelligence gathering. Future operations of this type should carefully consider the ethical implications of manipulating human memory and identity to this degree." The report was classified at the highest levels and buried in a vault beneath CIA headquarters in Langley. But for David, Marina, and Katya Mitchell, the most important truth was simple: they had found each other across impossible circumstances and chosen to remain a family despite everything. In a world where nothing was quite what it seemed, that love was the only thing that had ever been completely real. As Katya grew older and learned the truth about her parents' extraordinary past, she would sometimes ask them if they regretted the deception that had brought them together. "Never," David would tell her. "Without that mission, I never would have met your mother. You never would have been born." Sometimes the most beautiful things come from the most complicated circumstances. Marina would add, "The love we have for each other and for you, that's not something any intelligence agency created. That came from our hearts, and it's the truest thing in our lives." Years later, when Katya Mitchell graduated from the Air Force Academy and received her commission as a second lieutenant, both of her parents were there to pin on her bars. She had chosen to serve her country, but openly and honestly, without the layers of deception that had defined her parents' early lives. In her graduation speech as class valedictor, she said, "Service to country can take many forms. Some of us will fly missions in foreign skies. Others will gather intelligence in distant lands. But all of us must remember that our ultimate loyalty is not to any government or agency, but to the principles of truth and justice that make our sacrifices meaningful." The audience applauded, not knowing that her words carried a deeper significance born from a childhood spent at the intersection of international espionage and genuine human love. That night, as the Mitchell family celebrated Katya's graduation, David raised a toast to the most successful intelligence operation in American history, not because of the secrets we stole or the technology we acquired, but because it gave us each other. The three of them clinked glasses under the Virginia stars, a family born from deception but bound together by truth. In a world where governments played chess games with human lives, they had managed to find something real and precious and worth protecting. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe to FictionWire Russia. This is a fictional story created purely for entertainment.